life in 3 dimensions got me bent and got me twisted. I know I done said a lot, but I should probably stop pretending. I don't really hold the key and I can't really push a button. I just step up to the mic and try my very best to bust it, but I ran out of breath. It's tight in my chest, my feet just might fail. I can't stand the pressure.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Racially Speaking, where we have real and honest conversations about race as it's viewed through the lens of faith, family, and vocation. As always, I'm your host, David Phipps, and I think this might be episode 50. So,
Is it?
I don't know. That feels like an obligatory celebration. We don't really do the formalities typically, John Mark, but look, this is part 2 of our accountability-themed episode. So or episodes now, I guess, this is part 2. Look, we're not going to be quite as long as episode 1, but we did want to hit on a few things that we think are really relevant to where things are at right now and are headed. So we wanted to spend a little bit of time with this. So, all right. So, John Mark, accountability. We have to talk about, shed some light a little bit on some politics. We're not going to get we're not here to take sides or be too explicit about any in which person necessarily, but I think racially speaking on these issues, again, when we say racially speaking, this is a racial justice podcast. So that's our wheelhouse of what we think is important to talk about. That doesn't mean we don't think other things are important to talk about justice related, but we do want to shed light on these things, which is hopefully why you're listening. On the why I'm in the mood to clarify so much on these 2 episodes, but hopefully it's helpful. All right, so John Mark, presidential race is coming up. It feels like it's already begun, really, which I guess it kind of has in 2024.
Yep.
There's about 1,000 people running or throwing their names in the hat for the Republican Party.
Did you say 1,000?
Yeah, for the Republican Party, and then it feels like there's like 2 in Democratic Party, which as of now, President Biden seems like he's going for re-election, even though he's, right, I think, going to be 86 by the time he's done, right? Yes, that's old. That does not necessarily mean
an 86-year-old.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily mean he's incoherent like people are calling him. Yeah. It doesn't mean he can't do the job. It doesn't mean he can't do the job because he fell more than once. Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Is that a good thing that's happening? No.
My 90-year-old neighbor still drives himself to McDonald's. Sharply attack.
Shout out to Caitlin and I's, both of Caitlin and I's grandmas. Are some of the spryest women we know. Are up there in age as well, around that. So
yeah. Just because you're physically slower doesn't necessarily mean you're mentally slower, right? So
absolutely. Yeah. So I'm not here to say that
but
either.
Also, give some younger people a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'll say this. I'll say this at the front end because I don't really want to spend much time with it. We're talking about accountability and how things have changed and we need to move on. Guys, as we're sitting here recording, we're never going to claim to be political experts, but it's got to be concerning that Donald Trump is right now the most likely person to be running for the Republican side. And yes, he's going through a bunch of indictments right now. What I understand is that the only way, and it looks like he's toast. It looks like the cases are very solid, against him, objectively. But it's really concerning that if he was to become president, that's how he would avoid going to jail. So it's just to put that out there, it's pretty terrifying to think of if and when the election comes and he's the Republican candidate, that it'll honestly come down to, again, much like the last one, okay, do we want Biden or Trump? The lesser of, I know everyone voted for Biden, just a lot of people just didn't want Trump at that point. Not we love Biden, obviously. But it'll also be, there'll be another element of, do people want to keep him out of jail? It's just a crazy scenario.
It is.
And going back to how things have changed or not changed, and let's move on. Like, a lot of the reason we're where we're at now is because of stuff that was happening under his leadership. And for him to come back, like, it's jaw-dropping to think that would happen again after all this is like stuff has changed. And so anyway, I really don't want to spend a lot of time there, but that I had to start there at the top and then trickle down. I want to hit on a couple of people that on the Republican side who have thrown their hats in the race, and we would discuss more Democrats if there was more, but these are two that I think have, racially speaking, brought up some issues. Mm-hmm. Nikki Haley. John Mark, did you watch the town hall?
I did. Okay, I did watch the town hall.
She held a town hall in Iowa, and so she's a former South Carolina senator, and then I forget what she was an ambassador for. Is also an ambassador.
She was governor.
Governor, South Carolina governor.
Yeah. Yep.
And then an ambassador for something internationally related. Anyway, she, again, you guys can watch this if you'd like. It's on, online and stuff. But some things she brought up, racially speaking, I thought were interesting. So I'll say this at first. I didn't really know much about her at all, but I'd heard enough about her, so I was like, I want to see what she's saying, what she's about. It's interesting. She's, obviously a potential female candidate for the presidency. Mm-hmm. I think she had, I thought she was white, to be honest, and then a name like Nikki Haley, but I think she's Indian, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. I
understand too.
Anyway, so, woman, potential female person of color, presidential candidate is interesting. But she said a lot. I honestly thought I agreed with a lot of stuff she said. I liked how she navigated some of the questions, and
me too.
I thought she did a good job of being, she's a politician, but I thought, and my threshold's pretty high, she did a pretty good job of being honest, not being afraid to say names and call people out, even in her own party, when she had to, and wasn't skirting around really anything. So I'll say that. Like, I was like, okay. Like, it wasn't like to the point where like, oh, I'm sold by any means, but it was like,
right.
This is not like she's making some interestingly good points.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I was surprised too. Mm-hmm. I was coming in because since 2016, I have not felt great about Republican candidates.
Yeah.
So to be honest, that was the last time, and that was the last time where I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll go either way. Still figuring out what I believe, what I wanted to see, who I wanted to put my vote behind. But hearing her speak, I was like, okay, she has a good way of speaking, some really good thoughts. She clearly communicates her stances. I don't agree with everything she said, but I don't know. I think there could be some way worse people who could lead our country than Nikki Haley. So I'm not endorsing her. I'm just saying, I was very pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, not endorsing anybody. Really not endorsing anybody. We're talking about the issues on here.
Right,
some issues she brought up. Again, she was the governor of South Carolina. One thing she said, and they South Carolinian leaders love to bring this up. Bringing it full circle from first episode, or part one of this episode, the forgiveness thing. I forget, was it 20? I forget the year.
2017, I believe.
That's what I was gonna say. 2017. Dylan Roof, of course, the horrible tragedy, shooting at the church in South Carolina. Do you remember the name of the church? I should have looked it up.
Emmanuel AME.
Yeah, Emmanuel AME. Yeah. In South Carolina, all black victims was then everyone saw was about race. Was it officially, I don't know, classified as like a hate crime? Anyway, she in her town hall was bringing that up when I guess asked about race or about I can't remember even what the question was, but she went on this long story about what it has meant to her to be part of getting rid of the Confederate flag. I don't know if that means, does it mean like it's illegal to fly to South Carolina, period, now? Or
No, I think it was
just
no
for-
longer flown at the State House.
Yeah, okay, that's what it was. No longer
Yeah.
flown at the State House.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say,
And
I see
I just
plenty of
looked up-
those. Okay.
It was 2015, actually, just
Okay.
to set the record straight. But
I was going to say, I see
but yeah,
plenty of those when I drive down to Myrtle Beach.
yeah, you've seen plenty of those.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I want to hear your thoughts, obviously, John Mark. But like the way she was framing it was just so. Again, she's a politician. I'm a hero for this. And the funny thing was, it was she was responsible for making all the calls, and she made it really sound very dramatic of getting that Confederate flag taken down. After the fact, and these are her words. Once she realized that the shooting was a race thing, like she said, at first I was upset that people were making it about race. I didn't think that was right, and then it wasn't until I saw people celebrating the shooting on TV, draped in Confederate flags, that I realized, oh my gosh, this flag really means something. We need to get it taken down. And again, there wasn't, the focus wasn't on how much she learned or like how wrong it was to not realize this sooner. It was all about, this is what I did, because I was so moved by seeing this tragic symbol celebrated in this way. And to me, that's tough, because again, I'm not saying everyone needs to be on the same trajectory, but for a leader of her stature to not understand that of what that flag has always meant, it's hard not to view that as unacceptable. I'm not saying like I don't want this stuff to be taken down now, even though it is too late, but for it to be framed in that kind of way, when she's on a campaign trail, was just, I'm like, that it was frustrating to me. Did you listen to that part of it?
I did. Yeah, I did. So you're saying that it was frustrating that she kind of used it as like look. Can you share a little more what you're saying was frustrating?
I think she was giving herself a pat on the back for getting rid of it that day in that moment.
Yeah.
And not shedding any light on that is old news to anybody that's paid attention.
Yeah. Yeah, that she was a bit behind the times.
Yeah.
Like there are communities of people who are like, yeah, it is. Racism is attached to that symbol, and it should have been taken down a long time ago. Yeah, it's so funny to me in politics, because on one hand she has to, like, that was an accomplishment. So, and it's probably her best accomplishment around any type of racial unity or racial justice progress. And it's probably, if she has done anything else, it's probably the most acceptable one for her constituency that she can talk about, right? So there's all these reasons why she kind of has to highlight that and talk about it. But what is it? What is that verse that talks about doing good works before the Lord for the praise of the Lord and not for man? Because if it's for man, that's the only praise you're going to get. And it kind of feels like she was doing it, not then, but now she's using it for the praise, obviously, because she wants votes, so it does feel like it cheapens a little bit of the significance and the meaningfulness of what she did in that. One thing is impressive that she got people in South Carolina together to vote that way. And the way she told it, she was persuasive and persuaded everybody. And that may be completely true, that because she said she thinks about a child, I think she said a little girl who looks up at that flag and feels negative about it, about herself because of it. That's some of what she said. She claims was what persuaded people to vote, which, that may be true. So, it's good that she did it, right? So you celebrate that she did good, but what else can we do, Nikki Haley?
Here's what
and I don't want to pick on her. I don't want to pick on her because just what else can we do? Your crew, like Republican Party. What else can we do? And I also don't want to pick on them because I'm not satisfied with what the Democratic Party is doing in progressing us towards racial unity and justice. I think, I'm not, yeah, what are we doing? Like,
well, here's what I'll compare it
everybody
to.
across the board, donkey, elephant. What are we going to do to move the needle forward?
Yeah, here's what I'll compare it to. It's like, I'm not going to pat the Republican leaders on the back who spoke out about Trump on January 6th for the first time. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's fine. Like, that's like, I don't want them to not, but I'm not like, they can't now be like, yeah, I was always against him, or like, you know, it's just too much.
It's true.
It's too late.
True.
Without certain amounts of accountability. That's fine. Like,
Right.
you can do you and speak up then and move forward, and you know, we'll see if you walk the walk type thing. But like, that took essentially no guts to do that then. Like, they're in your front yard, literally. Like, I think in one of the first couple of episodes, I remember my friend, you know, Zach pointed that out of like, they're doing that now because they're on their lawn. Like, they're literally on their lawn coming for them. Like,
Armed.
what are they supposed to do?
Armed, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like,
Yeah.
that's all. Like, again, racially speaking, I think that's like, it's a subtle thing. Again, I actually thought the town hall was pretty good, pretty solid.
Me too.
In no way endorsing anybody. I'm just saying, like, it was interesting how she navigated those, I thought, racial issues.
Yeah, I want more from her. Like, what is? So that was the past. You did that. That's great.
Yeah.
That flag down. That flag should not be flown in any state house. I also think, as an aside, that is an enemy flag. Like, it is an enemy flag to the United States of America. They fought our army. Like, what other enemy army do we fly their flag for in a state house? Like, okay, take it down. Anyway, that set aside, I want to know what she would do moving forward, right? Every politician who's going to be running for president in 2024, I want to know, since the civil rights movement that we had in the wake of the murder of George Floyd, what are you going to do to help progress us forward in greater race relations, in police reform, in making sure that something like that doesn't happen again, even though it's already happened since George Floyd over and over and over again? What are you going to do to prevent that from happening? That's what I want to know, not what you've done. Like, that's great. Good job. Thanks for doing it. What are you going to do now? Right. And I think this will probably head towards the next thing that we're going to. She was also asked about woke, right? The definition of woke, right? I
always love that the first response is always, it can mean a lot of things.
Yeah. And it's like, like that is what we're talking about. Like, we should be talking about how to help the lives of Black and brown people in a country who are suffering systemic injustice. But what we end up talking about is this word woke, which is a slang word that was started by Black people to mean stay aware of your surroundings, both for your physical safety, your mental safety. There's this town near my sister and brother-in-law that is still a sundown town, right? Which means sundown town. If your butt is black, get back. They didn't say butt. They would paint that on signs. If your butt is black, get back, or you should leave before sun is down, or something's going to happen, right? There's still a town today that my brother-in-law drives past on his way to work every day, that like he needs to be aware of where he is on the highway. Should his car break down, he has to be aware of who he can call for help on his way to work, because that town is full of racists who would want to do him harm still today, right? So that's what it is to be woke, is to be aware of your surroundings when you're traveling, but also to be aware of just the political climate and the injustices that could be headed towards you. That's what it means to be woke. That's what it originally meant to be woke, and that's what it still means today. But that word has been, I think the word is co-opted to mean different things, like anything that has to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, but in a negative way, right? So that is what I think that word has come to mean. But she was asked that question. What the question was, what does woke mean to you, or something? Right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
What does woke mean to you?
Yeah, it was something like that. And I don't remember
Yeah.
anything she said with it, but remembered.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't care what it means to you
Right.
personally. You know, like
I think her
there's a real
common
definition for this.
right. Her common thing was like saying
Yeah.
it is kind of interpreted differently by everybody type mentality, or like it was. I'm trying to think of how she worded it. Yeah, it was kind of beating around the bush of like what it actually means, and then it was kind of subtly saying what she thought it meant. But I think I felt like often was saying like, well, a small amount of people believe it means this, which is often the right way to view it, and then but everyone else views it this way. It's like, well, no. So you do understand, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
But-
okay. Let's see. Well, I guess speaking of South Carolina, I'm looking at the wrong part of my notes. All right, so the other guy or the other person is Tim Scott. Let's talk about him for thought. I think it's a good thought exercise. So I think he's also a senator in South Carolina as well. Actually,
South Carolina
I forgot
senator,
he was off
yeah.
to South Carolina.
So she was a governor. He's
South
senator.
Carolina.
Yeah.
So okay, he's thrown his hat in the race again. I don't think either one of them has a shot, just numbers wise. That's not my opinion. I just think that's the fact.
So similarly, I listened to his interview with Trevor Noah that he did, before Trevor Noah left the Daily Show.
Yeah.
And I was also impressed with what he had to say. Like, I don't know if I'm going to vote for him, but I was impressed with I want to read his book now. So
so the thought exercise is this. I think he's a really problematic black voice because he specifically, racially speaking, denies racism, systemic racism.
Huh.
Like that's his thing. He's like, look at my life. It's proof that doesn't exist. Like this is a land of opportunity. So he's all like, work hard, you get to here.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to me. That's what I mean by thought exercise, because he's very, and even Trevor Noah said this, he would be somebody that would innately push back on anything about him. But he is very upfront and unapologetic about his experience with racism as a black man. And that's just so interesting to me, because I'm like, how can, and I like the nuance most of the time, but I'm like, how can those two things be so true? Like, you are very upfront about it, like unapologetic about your story. Like he talks about his mom, him growing up in poverty, his mom working, being a single mom through divorce, working 16-hour days, being stopped by police throughout his life, like numerous times.
In the interview, he shared about taking his grandfather to vote for Obama.
It's just so interesting.
Just what that meant, the voting history and in South Carolina, the limits placed on black people in voting in his grandfather's lifetime. And I mean, I don't know how you can talk about that, have that experience with your grandfather, know the history of that, and say that systemic racism doesn't exist. I mean, that's voting rights is a perfect example of systemic racism.
And
gerrymandering is a perfect example of systemic racism.
It's like there's two different people, and I don't think he's on purpose being hypocritical, which is why it's so confusing. I'm like, you're talking about inequality in education, all the stuff you want to do for education. Yeah. And how black and brown people are affected differently. I'm like, but you don't believe it exists. So you're saying in one breath.
Yeah, what are the causes of that?
Yeah, the black community is essentially like needs to work harder, because he talks about later like every able-bodied person should be working, like because that goes into some other issues. And like he's essentially saying he worked and got where he is because he worked hard. Therefore, systemic and racism doesn't exist. Like I've heard him. I think he was on The View, and he said like, we got a black president, we got a black like all these people, like really basic, like elementary examples in my opinion. And I'm like, that how can like you say both of these things? And this is where I do think he was a little manipulative, and this was on The View. I think he was saying giving some statistics about education that were pro, like, oh, look what I've done, or look what the Republicans have done. And he used like an HBCU stat for like graduation rates. Yeah. And she was like, that's an HBCU stat. He's like, it is, but like, it's a good one. It's like, and he just kept going. I'm like, nah, but that is complete, like 1000% out of context of like, Anyway, that he's interesting. I think he's really, I had some interesting, really good things to say, but then denies racism exists. I'm just like, what? I don't know. What in the world? That's what I left thinking, you know?
Yeah.
All right, do you got anything more
I
on
just
that?
think that it's a product of this individualistic mindset, this bootstrap mentality, right? That anyone can work out of any situation if they just work hard enough. And it's just not true.
It's not true.
That is just not true. There are too many. It's called trap for a reason, right? There are too many circumstances, especially for those in poverty, that are keeping people down. I think the average home. I read this stat, and I'm not. You can quote me on it, but don't quote me on it. But the average American household can't handle a random $400 charge without borrowing money or going into debt, which is like $400. That's crazy. That's a crazy little amount. Like that.
Yeah.
We had a water bill. We had a leak in our house, and there was a water bill. 2 months that were $400, right? Yeah. So that small things could cause that. A car accident could cause that. Your deductible on insurance could cause that. So, and that's not even for people impoverished. That's just your average. So, imagine that, right? Like it could just knock you completely off whack. You could get behind on your bills, your rent, electricity, food, and then what do you do for more money, right? And there are people who work 2 jobs and are stuck in poverty cycles. And tell me anyone who works 2 jobs doesn't work hard.
Right, and that's his whole thing. He's using his mom as the person that he's looking up to. Like, my mom did all this, worked hard, and got out of it, and taught me to not victim blame. Here's the whole thing. Like, he's like, everyone's victim blaming now, and I'm like, you're essentially like you're elevating your mom, but you know that she's the type of person that you're saying is a victim blamer now. Like, I'm saying, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying. Yeah. She clearly said you just got to work hard to get out of your situation, but you're bypassing all the things that she found herself having to work herself out of. Like she, it's just right. You have to see what you're saying.
She was able to do that. Not everybody's able to do that. Yeah.
Like that's great. Like his mom should be revered for getting out of the situation, but it's like, why were those situations there?
I need to read his story more. But he also talked about his father not being there. But even in his story, the brief interview with Trevor Noah, he talked about his grandfather being there. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like it was just like him and his mom were not alone, right? And that itself is a step up. But back to this bootstrap thing, what are pulling yourself up by a bootstrap to a person who doesn't have boots? You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Love that quote.
Like if people are so low down, so oppressed systemically, that they have nothing to build on, how can they pull themselves up, right? So I don't know. Usually when I hear Black conservatives talking about working hard to getting to where they've gotten, they have worked. I'm not trying to say they haven't worked hard. I'm sure they worked through some hard things, right? But usually there's 1 or 2 people in their story that help them get from one point to another, right? Nobody earns everything on their own, except for Tarzan. But then even Tarzan had the ape, help him. Like somebody changed everybody's diaper. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like somebody gave you milk when you were a baby that helped you get from one point to another. A teacher touched you at one point and pushed you forward. They encouraged you and they, progressed you onward. Like somebody gave you your first job, right? Somebody said yes to you on a resume, right? Yeah. Somebody said, yes, you can buy this house, right? So along the way, I guarantee you there are people who tie his boots for him. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. He also, as an example of how to move forward with togetherness and racial conversations, he, of course, referenced Dylan Roof and the people at Emmanuel AME and how they forgave Dylan Roof right away, and how that, forgiveness is a beautiful thing. Like we'll say that, but how that's just subtly hijacking the racism that took place. You know what I'm saying? Like this stuff is life and death. Like literally, like, that's case in point. Like, it's a life and death thing. Like, this isn't like a fun intellectual thing we're doing here. Like, so that's why, like, it is bothersome when somebody ignores something that's so egregiously true when it affects people, in this case, because of their skin color. We could keep going and going with a lot of the stuff. My headphones are about to die. I'm going to be honest.
Are they?
I keep hearing the buzz in my ear, and I'm like, I'm about to lose them.
That's not good.
Last thoughts, John Mark? We told them we keep this pretty short, so I think we're about half an hour.
Okay. Yeah, last thoughts. Forgiveness comes in connection with repentance. I mean, I think you can put forgiveness out there and leave it there, but they can't take it unless they acknowledge, I've done something wrong and I actually need your forgiveness. Yeah. So I think it's great to honor that. The survivors of the people who were murdered because of racist actions of Dylann Roof forgave Dylann Roof, like put it out there. I think that's great. I don't know where Dylann Roof is at with it, but I think we need, that is a reality. Repentance is a step in this forgiveness process. And repentance comes with grief and acknowledging the wrongs we have done. I think in moving forward, it's kind of like forgiveness, right? If we want to move forward in racial reconciliation, which I want to, it comes with being able to acknowledge the bare truth of history of racism in our society, and just continually be able to acknowledge that. Like, it's not like you ever like, okay, it's gone, we don't have to think about it anymore. Get comfortable with it, because it's something that is in our past. As long as the dollar is green, it will always be backed by an economy that owned Black people and abused Native American people and other brown people. Like, the dollar will always be bloody. But what we get to do is we get to take those dollars and work against some of the lingering effects of that evil that was done. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to say.
That's great.
Forgiveness comes with repentance. So
love it. Forgiveness comes with repentance. I think of the word lament, which I hear a lot around in Christian circles, and I think I'm no expert, but something that was frustrating, at times like 2020 was hearing that word so much in Christian spaces. We all need to lament, and I think I heard a recent sermon on it actually, and one of my buddies gave it, but in its essence, it's mourning, and it's mourning, but it's also giving space to those who need it. You know what I mean? To lament. Yeah. And so, like, I think that's something that just was not happening. So it's hard to hear the lamenting be talked about so much. And it's largely a term used in Christian circles, but like, we need to lament racial injustice, all this. And like, I'm like, yeah, we do. Why aren't we doing that? Like, now's the time. Like, we do all need to collectively lament, and which bring it full circle, like, people of color would be not elevated, but be given space to have this happen for us as a body, as a church body. And I think that still needs to be happening. And I think that not happening correctly, instead just talked about and not actually happening, is why it's hard to accept the forgive and move on mentality. So I would love for, that to be true moving forward and along the lines of what we've been talking about throughout these 2 episodes. So, love your words. I should have gone first and you go second, but say yours one more time, because yours was a lot more succinct and better, John Mark.
Forgiveness comes with repentance.
Forgiveness comes with repentance. Perfect. Boom. That's the t-shirt. Forgiveness comes with repentance.
There you go.
All right. Hey, you guys, these were some 2 hard thinking episodes. We went in the trenches with some of this. We appreciate you guys listening, though, as always. The music you're listening to is done by our friend Dylan Dent. Our artwork was created by Ashley Bush. And thank you guys for listening. We'll see you guys next time.
The nightmare might scare you, no worse than reality. They hunt you by day, R.I.P. Ahmaud Arbery. Everybody got a time, but that's less than comforting. I hope I'm alive by the time they choose to comfort me. Mosquitoes in the vein, or leeches on my soul. This money on my mind is a fracture in my bones. You get crippled by continuing existence like a ghost. And they wonder why we drink, and they wonder why we smoke, and they wonder why we think that everything's a joke. I'm shocked that we can sleep, must be the thought of letting go.